The burst left way station Dravathmere at 0341 station time, and by 0342, I had it queued on my board at Harith 4 with a yellow routing flag and a frequency drift annotation I'd never seen before. 14.7 kilocycles off the standard Coalition rescue band. Carrier wave degraded in a pattern that my diagnostic overlay described, dryly, as consistent with extended dormancy in the transmission hardware. I noted that. I noted the origin coordinates, which put the source 18 light minutes out, past the debris shoal at the edge of Dravath corridor. I noted that the signal had self-identified as an emergency burst. Then I noted that no active station appeared in our registry at those coordinates, and I flagged it for response. I did not flag it for escalation. That distinction matters. Standing patrol orders at Harith 4 are straightforward on the subject of distress signals. Receive, log, verify coordinates, dispatch available hulls. The orders do not specify which emergency band the signal must originate from. They do not require the origin station to appear in our current registry. Commander Velth had written those orders himself 6 years prior, and I had always appreciated that he was not a man who cluttered standing orders with unnecessary conditions. So at 0349, 7 minutes and change after the burst hit my queue, I tasked Corvettes Ardent and Varith off their supply rotation, transmitted a bearing, and logged the retasking as a standard patrol response. I did not wake Commander Velth. He was sleeping. The orders covered it. Ardent acknowledged at 0351. Varith was 11 seconds behind her. Both captains asked, in their separate and equally laconic ways, what they were going into. I told them, hull breach, possible multiple casualties, single source, origin station not in current registry. Captain Drev on Ardent said, copy. Captain Sol on Varith said nothing at all, which I had long since learned to interpret as enthusiastic agreement. I sent them the frequency drift annotation as a supplemental. I noted in my own log that the carrier pattern was unusual. Then I brewed a second cup of what passed for coffee at Harith 4, sat back down at my board, and waited to hear what they found. They found Tarath Volson. He told me this much later, when we had established a working relay link, and he had recovered sufficiently from what I can only describe as a profound bureaucratic shock. He was the senior communications archivist at Dravathmere, which was not, it turned out, a derelict station, or rather, it had been derelict, but it was derelict no longer, because 3 weeks prior a slow geological event in the asteroid belt adjacent to the way station had breached the outer pressure ring. And Tarath's skeleton crew of 11 had spent those 3 weeks patching seals with hand tools and watching their atmosphere bleed by increments they could calculate precisely and affect. Only barely. He had fired the burst at the Coalition rescue band. He had been certain of this. He had pulled the emergency transmitter from its housing himself, verified its charge, aimed the antenna array at the Coalition's sector relay beacon, and triggered the burst. What he had not known, what the station's 4-century dormancy had obscured in every layer of its diagnostic memory, was that the transmitter's carrier oscillator had drifted. Not 14.7 kilocycles. More like 14.7 kilocycles on top of a base frequency error that had been accumulating since the station was last serviced, which was, I later confirmed from his records, for 111 years ago. The burst had not gone to the Coalition rescue band. It had gone, with the confidence of a man who had checked his work carefully and been wrong about all the underlying assumptions, directly onto Earth's active patrol frequency at Harith 4. He did not know Earth maintained an active patrol frequency at Harith 4. He did not, strictly speaking, know we maintained a patrol frequency in this corridor at all. He told me later, very carefully, with the precision of a man who had spent his career in archival communications and understood the weight of exact phrasing, that Earth's operational presence in the outer Dravath corridor was not reflected in any registry document he had access to. I told him we had been running patrol rotations through this corridor for 60 years. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said that he would need to update several files. Ardent and Varith reached the way station at 0631. Captain Drev hailed me first. She said, and I am quoting from the log because her exact wording is worth preserving. Harith 4, we have the station. Outer pressure ring breach confirmed. For separate seal failures, 11 personnel aboard. All alive. None critical. They are looking at us like we are something they did not order. I asked her to clarify. She said, "The archivist keeps asking me what band we answered on." I told her to tell him band 7, Earth Standard, and to get the repair team on the seals. She came back 40 seconds later. She said, "He says that's not the Coalition rescue band." I said, "No, it is not." She said, "He wants to know how we heard him." I said, "Tell him we logged it as a standard incoming hail." There was a pause that I estimated at about 6 seconds. Then Drev said, "He's sitting down." The repair work took 9 hours. Ardent carried 2 hull technicians and a full seal patching kit as part of her standard supply rotation loadout. Not because anyone had planned for Dravathmir specifically, but because hull breach kits are standard equipment on patrol corvettes in the outer corridor, and someone had stocked them thoughtfully. The 4 seal failures were addressed in order of atmospheric loss rate, which the crew of Dravathmir had been tracking on a handwritten chart that Drev described to me as meticulous and quietly heartbreaking in the way that records kept by people who are not certain they will survive tend to be. By 1540, the outer ring was sealed. Atmosphere stable. 11 personnel confirmed healthy, including Tarath, who spent most of those 9 hours in the station's communications room re-examining his transmitter logs and writing notes in a margin that I imagine ran to several pages. I spoke to him directly once, on the relay link, in the early afternoon. He had a precise, formal voice, the voice of a man accustomed to documents, to the careful recording of what had happened and why. He told me his name and his title. He told me the date he had fired the burst and the target band he had believed he was using. He told me about the oscillator drift in a way that made clear he had now understood it thoroughly and would not forgive himself for missing it quickly. Then he asked me the question I had been expecting. He said, "Watch officer, did Earth know this station existed?" I said, "No, sir. You were not in our registry." He said, "Then how did you respond so quickly?" I said, "Standing orders. Distress signal received. Hulls available, dispatch." He was quiet again. Then, "You did not verify that the origin was a known station?" I said, "The orders don't require that." Another pause. He said, "You sent 2 ships to coordinates that produced no result in your registry, based on a burst that arrived on the wrong band, in under 10 minutes. I said, 7 minutes, 40 seconds, from receipt to dispatch authorization. He did not say anything for a moment. I heard him set something down, a stylus, maybe, or a cup. Then he said, quietly, "We aimed the burst at the Coalition." I said, "I know." The frequency annotation was in the routing log. He said, "You came anyway." I said, "The signal said distress. We had ships. That was the whole of it." Ardent and Vareth departed Dravathmir at 1618 and resumed their supply rotation. I logged the retasking as closed, noted the 9-hour repair window, appended a copy of the frequency drift annotation, and filed the incident report. The incident report was 1 paragraph. The final line read, "Origin station not in current registry at time of dispatch. Registry update recommended. Response outcome, 11 personnel, all recovered." I sent a courtesy notification to Commander Velth, who had slept through the entire affair and who wrote back 3 words. "Good work, Kars." Tarath Volson, I was told by Drev as a footnote to her own debrief, had filed an inquiry with Coalition records by the time Ardent cleared the debris shoal. The inquiry asked, among other things, why Earth maintained patrol corvettes in the outer Dravath corridor, how long this had been the case, and whether the Coalition's outer sector emergency registry ought to include Earth's patrol frequencies. The inquiry took 6 months to receive a response. I don't know what the response said. That part wasn't in my log. What was in my log was the timestamp, 0349, dispatch authorized. 7 minutes and 40 seconds from a 400-year-old transmitter's first cry into the wrong frequency, to 2 ships turning off their supply rotation and heading out into the debris shoal to find whoever was there. Tarath had aimed his burst at the Coalition and hit us instead. He never meant to call Earth. He didn't know Earth was listening. We were always listening. We just hadn't had reason to say so until his transmitter found us by accident, across 400 years of oscillator drift, on a Tuesday morning in the outer corridor when 2 corvettes happened to be close enough to reach him in time. That seemed, to me, like the whole story. I filed it under routine. I still think that was the right call.